Hello and welcome back to Tommy's Top Picks Weekly Roundup podcast, episode 166. I'm your host, Tommy, joined by John.
How's it going?
You tried to remember how to play 60 card Magic this week,
I sure did. It didn't
and
go
it
well
went great. It went great.
for Tommy.
Yeah, so we played a bunch of Pioneer/Explorer on Arena, which was a ton of fun. A format that I've never explored before, but am now very interested in.
I'm interested in it too. Despite
Yeah.
the setbacks, I will continue to chug along with it for a little while at least because it's doing the thing I want, which is giving me quick and easy access to games that I can just click a button and play and not
Yeah,
really care
that's
and kind of learn some tech
mhm.
and stuff like that, which I like.
Yeah,
So,
that was my main appeal with standard
yep.
and what I've been doing over the past couple months. Um, gonna talk about some Pokemon, of course. We got a new update on availability that I'll dive into. There's a few. It's very similar to the one we got a couple months ago, but there was a couple little nuance differences that I'd like to highlight. I'm going to talk about Tarkir, obviously, because that is why John tried 60 cards, because he's
Yeah.
excited for Tarkir.
Yep.
And then we're going to talk about the ever fun, always fun economic world and how it may impact our luxury high end cardboard rectangles. But as we always start with what we played this week. And John messaged me earlier this week and was like, hey, I played for the pod. I played MTGO, which I'm curious because we did not talk about. And I have never downloaded MTGO
I would say don't.
because later in the week, John sent a message for the pod. I played Arena.
So I was like, So it is playable. It's not nearly as bad as I had been led to believe by the internet. People were like, I can't even figure out how to tap my cards. It's not. It's intuitive enough. You can pick it up and play. It's just it is horrible. Like a 19. Imagine. Do you remember IRC? Did you ever do the chats that were in IRC? Do you know that?
No,
It's too you're too young.
before
Yeah,
my time.
yours was what, Instant Messenger
Aim,
was your
aim.
first? Yeah, okay, yeah. So I'm trying to
Set my
remember
away
AIM's
message.
day. Yeah. Okay. So, did you ever do any of the chat room type clients and stuff like that? Like not AIM, because AIM was like direct message. Did you ever do chat room style things?
I did Ventrilo for World of Warcraft.
Nah. I mean, okay. Actually, that's a fairly good comparison. You know how the UI is in that? How it's like very blocky and
Yeah,
like 1990s style.
yeah.
That's how this is. MTGO is still that.
I don't know if I could do that.
It's rough. It is rough, and the way it works is like these dialogues pop up and get in your way of doing things, and you can't move them around because everything's very static in the way it's set up.
Yeah.
It is rough. It is like definitely a trip back to my childhood in the '90s when I was doing IRC. Is the thing that remind me of because that was basically a blocky client like this too. That was where all the chat rooms were before AIM existed. Oh, it's tough, man. I didn't even try to make a deck. They give you like free decks and
Yeah.
stuff. And then that's the other thing. Until you get to a certain rank or something, you're not even allowed to talk in the chat rooms.
Oh,
And
jeez.
so, because they probably had spam bots
Yeah.
and they're like
Yeah.
advertising, erectile dysfunction pills or something, right? Which makes sense. Like I appreciate that they did that. It's just I
You buy
jumped into my
cat.
first game using the default deck, which is a poison green deck, right? Like there might be two of them they give you for Pioneer, something like that. And then so I tried that one. I jumped into my first game. I pulled out a mana and then I tapped and played my one green critter, something like that. And the person put in the chat poison deck question mark. And I go to respond and it says you cannot respond until you reach rank 5. And I'm like, well, yes, but I don't know how to tell you yes. And I can't. And it took me a while to even figure out how to type in the chat. It's
Oh,
that
jeez.
convoluted. Yeah, it was like, and so he played for like two more turns while I janked around trying to figure out how to use the UI and then also how to play the deck. And then he just bailed on me. And I was like, yep. And then so you win and it pops up this thing you win, right? Like a
Yeah.
win dialogue. And I exit out of that and I'm still in the game and it I couldn't figure out how to get out.
Oh no. So you could like review the board state or whatever.
Yeah, it was a review of the board state thing. I couldn't figure out how to get back to the lobby. It took me a good 10 minutes to figure out how to get back to the menus that allow you to start a game. It is so convoluted. It is so old school. Like, I'm sure if you're in it, it's fine because you're used to all the little weirdness of it and it's easy to navigate once you learn it. But the learning curve for getting in there is very rough. And I felt like I was probably above curve for most people just because of my experience with things like IRC chats and these convoluted UIs from days of old. But yeah, no, I cannot recommend it for any new player, any younger player, anyone that's like, I don't know. It's got some good stuff to it. Like they have like I think all the cards in there, I believe. There's also a way to win physical cards from playing the tournaments. They run
Hmm.
regular tournaments for real money in there.
Same with Arena.
So yeah, but they do it a lot more.
Yeah.
Like from what I can tell, there was like 40 active tournaments.
Oh yeah,
That
yeah.
yeah,
This
I
is yeah.
was like, wow. It was crazy. The listing of stuff that was going on, it was nuts. They do a lot of stuff in there. So, and I don't know, maybe
Yes.
it's sponsored by certain shops and stuff or something. I don't know how they do it, but there was a lot of actual real stuff in there and but I couldn't even get past the UI. It was so like I'm a child of that era and I don't want to go back.
Yeah. You don't need to because we have
Yeah,
Arena.
Apple did a good thing in making, user interfaces something that is easy to work with as
Yeah.
opposed to a chore.
Yeah.
And it changed the world, it changed the web, it changed everything. And it is the one thing they actually did that they innovated. That's the only thing they ever innovated was the way people interact with machines. All of their stuff was stolen from other tech before them,
Yeah.
but they did innovate on the way it was used, and that's what made them so powerful and popular. Is taking things that people loved and making them easy to adopt and use, which is something that then spread through the world and Web 2.0 and all the rest. Right?
This could be good,
Everyone,
but it could be
yeah,
better. This is good, but it
yeah,
could be better.
exactly. Everyone went through and looked at their systems and were like, "How do I make this actually functionally usable so people enjoy it as opposed to fight it?" You know,
Yeah.
and it yeah, MTGA Arena is definitely that of MTGO, if you will, because it's way more usable, way cleaner interface. Which is so funny to hear myself say that because I remember us complaining about this probably a year ago
Hmm.
about arenas,
But in comparison,
problems. Yeah, but in comparison, it's it's light years ahead.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
anyways, so that was my MTGO experience. I played like 2 or 3 games and then I closed it and downloaded Arena.
yeah. Because I've always been tempted to, just because, like especially when we started talking about modern and playing the modern on TTS, because
Yeah,
you can't play modern on Arena, but you can play
yeah.
Pioneer. So, and that Pioneer
That's
is
that's what actually
after,
happened. It was
yeah,
modern that I played on there because
yeah,
that's the only place you can. Yeah.
right.
Sorry.
And no, it's okay. So we and something, not that I didn't enjoy modern, but it is just a very fast, very competitive format that I would. It's probably Magic's closest format to Flesh and Blood, and it's just not what I'm looking for in a format.
Yeah, I find that I have to say I hard disagree because that red deck isn't in modern. And by comparison, modern is slower because that red deck. That red deck is turn 3 game over.
Yeah,
The
it can be.
Pioneer one?
It can be.
Yeah. So standard and Pioneer are much faster than modern because modern actually has control like functionality, whereas standard and Pioneer do not.
There are
So
other
you said it was
quick things.
faster. I don't think modern's faster. It's more complex.
Sure.
You think it's faster than that red deck that ends the game on turn 3?
I read like 3 or 4 articles on the difference between modern and pioneer, and all of them stated that modern was a faster format. But
Are they recent?
yeah,
And why are you taking someone else's opinion?
because I haven't spent enough time with both formats.
That's fair.
I've barely touched them. And so
Um,
reading someone's actual experience that has that experience, I take over my own limited experience.
I don't know. I guess Boros Energy would be the fast deck.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was a very fast deck.
Eldrazi Ramp is the third highest deck, and that was very slow. Neither of us tried that grinding station one. We probably should have.
Yeah.
That is definitely the one everyone complains about. I have seen several things where the grinding station deck, like everyone's like, we need to ban some cards from that deck
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
modern. I don't know.
And I think if you ban Monstrous Rage, the speed of the Boros energy and a lot of stuff in Standard and Pioneer go down too. But
Modern looks like it has a much healthier meta than Pioneer.
sure,
Because it's 14, 11, 10, 7, 6, right? In top 5 decks.
you have more options.
Yeah, well, which is a healthier
Yeah,
format
yeah,
typically, right?
larger card pool. Yeah.
For Pioneer, it's currently 2 decks. It's the Rakdos and the red mice deck,
Mm-hmm.
and then everything else is like 1%.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not in a healthy place. Now, granted, I'm guessing, I don't know because we haven't experienced this yet. We'll see after Dragons that each set kind of shifts the Pioneer meta
I would
versus what you
assume
get with
more so
Modern.
than Modern.
Yeah, exactly. I think Modern's probably more stuck, right? So having a healthy meta in there is like pretty good because it doesn't change that
Yeah.
much. Whereas Pioneer, I have to assume that it's
There's a lot more answers to decks in Modern.
that's what I mean. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was saying is that it's like you're not stuck with just the red go burr since there's fast red, which you are in Pioneer. It seems like,
Right.
because it's like you have Rakdos mid range, which isn't that fast, but I guess I'm not sure why it's the top meta, but it definitely is.
Yeah. Well, it's mid range.
Yeah, but mid range typically isn't the top, is
No,
it?
it's more of like a tempo. It's not the
Yeah,
it's not the
yeah,
fast one.
yeah. But you have mono red, which is the answer to it,
Correct. Yeah.
right?
It's
So
fast.
it's like you have the deck and then the counter deck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of the meta. Although we didn't check out Gruul aggro yet, so that's a curious one.
That's
But
the
it's
one
aggro, so it's
it's
gonna be a fast one too.
the girl, yeah, it uses the mouse package as well. I looked at that, and that was the one I was gonna say I should build after, but then it was just kind of the same
Because
thing.
that will make the I was like
Yeah,
that will make it so much better.
no, because I was playing a Boros. Basically, I took the Gruul and just replaced all the green cards with white cards, and the lands.
Can
Obviously,
we
I
talk
just
about
used the
these
lands.
mice for a second? Because
Yeah,
these mice are fucking bullshit, man.
yeah.
They are crazy. I have not been playing standard, so I didn't really notice the mice. Didn't
The
know about them.
mice are a thing.
Yeah, and you mentioned it to me. I was like, oh, they do look powerful, but I didn't actually know until I watched it happen. Like they are crazy powerful.
Yeah, and so I'll start with my favorite of the three, the Heartfelt Hero. It's an uncommon, one red, 1/1 creature, mouse soldier with Valiant. So whenever Heartfire Hero becomes the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, it can put a +1/+1 counter on it. When it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. So if you give it a +1/+1 counter targeting it, it gets +2/+2 because of the Valiant. And then the bigger you make it, if it dies, it's dealing that damage. So it's a very sticky 1/1, and you need not only removal but removal to exile.
Yeah, and you have to remove it immediately, essentially, because
Yes.
otherwise it
The
will
longer
just
it sticks around, the
wreck.
more, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so the other target for your activated abilities and spells is the um, oh gosh dang it, is the Emberheart Challenger, which is 1 and a red, 2/2 haste and prowess. And whenever it becomes the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, exile the top card of your library until end of turn. You may play that card. So it gives red card draw. So you can pick your target whether you want to be more aggressive. If you have both out, you pick whether you want to be more aggressive or you need that extra card. And that extra card you can play after, because usually the ability that is triggering Valiant is the third mouse, Manifold Mouse, which is 1 and a red, but has Offspring. So you can pay 3 and a red for an additional 1/1 Manifold Mouse creature token. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target mouse you control gains your choice of double strike or trample until end of turn.
So you could do both if you do the
Offspring.
offspring, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Or you could target an Ember Heart and a Heartfelt.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a
You got options.
disgusting. Yeah, it's a disgusting mouse combo here. It's ridiculous. It's out of
It's
control.
really
And
good.
also, since when did a one cost 1/1 get all this stuff? Dude, this is
Yeah.
equivalent to Llanowar Elves? No, it
No.
definitely is not. And
No.
why is Red getting this? Like, what in the hell is going on here? It already has all the fast pumps. Why would you give it a super pumped, like pre-pumped 1/1?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Like it used to be goblins and they were just derps, right? That you pumped, right? That's what Red did. They pump. I get it.
Hmm.
And the death equals pinger stuff has been around forever. Burn, right?
Hmm.
But like self, like a one cost self pumping and self burning
Hmm.
card is insane. That's nuts.
It's really good.
And it's just uncommon.
Hmm.
Oh, it's not right, man. It's not right.
It's a good card. It's a really good card.
It's not right. They broke the game. What are they going to do? How are they ever going to fix this?
It's fine. It's fine.
It's not fine.
Everything's fine.
It's totally not fine. All right. So, to that point, why it's not fine and what they have to do or where things are, I guess. We were talking about this right before we started a little bit.
Hmm.
Is this the way to make the game easier for beginners, right? Because this is definitely targeting standard, right? As part of it, the mice, the
Yeah, with
Bloomberg
Foundations, the
roadmap.
obvious
Yeah,
format that they are pushing right now is standard. And they
yeah,
even
exactly.
heard the feedback that it's too short, so they made it longer.
And there's even a fair argument to say they're ignoring Pioneer, right? Because they were doing Pioneer
Yes.
products like a few years ago. Now they
Yeah.
stopped.
It
So
kind of died during the pandemic.
fine. Okay, I get that. I get it. Um, so is this their way of taking the game and adding complexity, but keeping it simple so that the new people that they're drawing in with the younger targeting of stuff like Bloomberg and all that
Hmm.
stuff, it keeps them engaged because they can win relatively easily without having to understand the depths of all the stack and how the what's it called, how the layers work, all that stuff, right? The complexity of the game, right, is just ignored with this deck. I mean, I think you have an argument against this, but generally speaking, there's not much in the way of rules usage here. It's numbers plus ones and attack, right? That
It's mainly around abilities and timing of abilities.
Yeah, there's some timing stuff for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, combat tricks.
Yeah.
Yeah. But combat tricks is still 101 turn card sideways, right?
Um, yeah, and when to do things.
Yeah. You still have to manage your timing on it, but
Hmm.
it is still, right? You're not doing anything on the stack that matters on the stack, right?
No, I mean it's a mono red deck. It's not
Yeah.
hard to
There's
pilot.
no interrupting, there's no layers, there's no copying, there's no, I
No,
guess the
it
offscreen
puts
copies,
yeah, it
but
puts
that's very basic, right?
yeah, it basically this puts the how to deal with this on your opponent, and then depending you don't
Are you
really have
saying
an
this deck
alternate
is
game plan.
autopilot? It's an autopilot deck? You do
It's
not have an
no,
alternate game plan, correct?
yes, you don't have an alternate game plan. You have one game plan, which to your point is good for players that are new that just have to learn one game plan, opposed to I have to do this against that kind of deck and this against that kind of deck. And yeah, I think there should always be an aggro deck for beginners.
Yeah, but this is the top of the meta
It
on
just
both, right? It's
happens
on
to be.
standard as well.
Yeah,
I don't know standard for sure.
the standard version is the Gruul version, which is a
Is that
little
a
more.
little bit more going on? I'm
Yeah,
looking at it now.
yeah.
Okay, you got some rabbits in here.
Hmm.
Still the mouse package.
Yep.
Okay, the green one does look like it is a little bit more going on.
Yes.
Still that monstrous rage. Tell me about that.
So yeah, that's what I was talking about. If there is a card to be banned in standard for this deck, it is the Monstrous Rage, because it is it's one red instant. Target creature gets +2 until end of turn, and create a monster token attached to it, which is a +1/+1. So you swing with your 1/1 Heartfire Hero, and it is swinging into whatever. Are you going to block it? If they have one red open and a card in hand, probably not, because it's gonna not only be a 1/1, but it'll be a 2/2 from the Valiant being targeted, and then it will be a 3/3 from the Monstrous Roll token, and then it'll be a 5/3 from Monstrous Rage. So that 1/1 is now a 5/3 swinging in with trample.
Yeah.
Off of 1 red.
So I guess my issue with this, and like I get it, if this is
It
a
de-emphasizes blocking.
yeah, well, it de-emphasizes playing the game. Like
Yeah.
it's really just who goes first and gets the right cards to pump.
Yes.
Like that's the entire game. Nothing you actually do, as long as you're following the one game plan, matters, right? Because it's just whoever gets to that pump level first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Assuming you get lands, right? Like no flooding, no land starve, right? But if you know how to mulligan, and it's so cheap, you could probably mulligan twice and still operate this game plan without an issue, right?
Yes. However, the top deck in standard, this Esper Pixie deck, it
Mhm.
crushes the red deck. Because a lot of the things,
Yeah, what's it doing that crushes it?
it's bouncing things. So you're gaining those +1s on your Heartfelt hero. Heartfire. I keep saying Heartfelt. Heartfire hero. Um, there's a lot of bounce mechanics to just bounce it back. So instead of killing it, you can still play it again next turn, but you're bouncing it and losing all that progress.
And that burns, yeah, that burns the burn,
Mm-hmm.
basically. Yeah. The deck that I thought would be good was a Demir bounce. It has similar tech. You saw it. The
Yeah.
Fear of Isolation was in there and all that stuff.
Yeah, this is
And
Demir plus some weight.
yeah, exactly. And it had a bunch of discard, which I was hoping would be enough, but the red has more card draw now than it did before, I guess.
Correct. Yes. But it's temporary card draw. It's until end of turn. So
Yeah,
most
it's
of the
good enough
times you
though.
burn it, but eventually you run out of lands. And so kind of at some point you're hoping to draw a land off of those so that
Mm,
you can then play it in the second main phase.
yeah.
And the reason I think they brought the white in was Sheltered by Ghosts, which is another one of those just equal to Monstrous Rage uh, kind of cards, which is one colorless and a white enchantment aura. Enchantments you enchant creature you control. When it enters, exile target non-land permanent. So it could be an enchantment, it could be creature, it could be anything, just non-land permanent an opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. And then the enchanted creature gets +1 and has lifelink and ward 2. All of that for 1 and a white.
That's crazy. That is also ridiculous.
Correct. So it's not just red that got these ridiculous cards.
Yeah, and that green card
The
in
Beanstalk one.
Tarkir, yeah, no,
No,
the sniper. That
right.
one was nuts. That was the one where I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but I definitely like lost my mind when I saw that in the Reddit, like, here's the reveal. I was like, what is this? One for lifelink, reach, and vigilance, 1/1, right? One green for all that. When? Since when?
All right, so you want to hear the green card?
Yeah, good.
It's called Up the Beanstalk. It's an enchantment for 1 and a green, so 2 mana. When Up the Beanstalk enters the battlefield, and whenever you cast a spell with mana value 5 or greater, draw a card.
Yeah, I guess that is a little cheap. I'm just thinking like Garruk's, right? It's similar. I think that's a 3 cost though, isn't it?
Yeah. So
So
this
that
is
one,
1 less,
yeah, one less, and
and you get to
that I
draw a
think that's
card
4
on
costs
when it
for that
enters.
one. You do with
Yeah.
Garruk's too.
Yeah.
If you have something with power 4 or greater, or something like that.
Right.
So it's a little bit slightly
This is
different. Yeah.
guaranteed.
Yeah, and green. It's pretty
And
much
green.
guaranteed
Yeah.
green too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's still cheaper, so it's definitely like an upgrade.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's as bonkers as these other ones though.
Yeah. But then they have like Nurturing Pixie from Outlaws, which is an uncommon 1 white. Flying, when Nurturing Pixie enters the battlefield, return up to 1 target non-fairy, non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand. If permanent was returned this way, put a +1/+1 on it. And this is the deck that plays like the Hopeless Nightmare,
Yeah,
Stormchaser's
but that's
Challenge,
not
Nowhere to
as
Run.
crazy, right? You're
No,
bouncing
it's
yourself. You're
yeah,
losing your own value to do that.
right. But you're
And you have
bouncing
to
like
pay it again.
you're getting a removal. back.
No, you're not. You're not remove. Well, you're
You
getting something
yeah,
back. You don't know what, right? But say it's a removal. Either way, you still have to pay for it again. It's not like it's
correct.
automatically coming
Correct.
back out. That's
Correct.
not a whole lot of value. That's a one. That's a 1/1 for one that is definitely going to get a +1 and then allows you to reuse a card.
Yeah.
So yes, powerful, but is that as powerful? Like that's a 3-step to power, right? Because you have to have something out, you have to
Yeah.
bounce it back, you have to play it again. Yours is 1 step to power in red, which I guess that's how they're doing it, right?
Yeah.
And
And
the sheltered ghost is pretty like that's bonkers too.
yeah.
Like that one's also 1 step to power. You're playing an enchantment on a creature you control, giving you a +1 ward and lifelink. All that is fantastic for 2. And then also you're abusing an opponent's situation by exiling. So like I get it.
Yeah.
It is there's definitely power creep.
Yeah.
Huge power creep. I don't know where I've been. Definitely not paying attention, that's for sure.
And then there's this town ain't big enough.
Yeah,
It's
that
a,
one's good.
it's an
That one's
instant. The spell, it's 4 and a blue. It costs 3 less to cast if it targets a permanent you control. Return up to 2 target non-land permanents to their owner's hand.
Yeah, I like this one because it's self-limiting. If you're
Mm-hmm.
targeting your own stuff, yes, that means you get ETBs again and stuff, but it's still like you are removing board advantage by doing that.
Yeah. But
You
sometimes
know,
that board advantage is nowhere to run, and you pull that back to your hand, and then you have another removal.
again, you still have to pay for it again.
Sure. Yeah.
So you end up with this situation where you're like it's the difference between free value and not free value, right? Like blue doesn't get the free value, it never has. That's how
No.
blue is always played. You got to play like a little bit more thoughtful to get things
Mm-hmm.
to work. Um,
But it always
it
ends.
is still good though.
Yeah.
Like don't get me wrong, this is a crazy good card. I've played
Yeah.
this in that Demir deck and it's really good.
Yeah. The deck is very good, and it always ends with me just scooping because I don't have any creatures out. I can't get every time I get a creature out, they bounce something back to their hand and kill it again. And so my Heartfire heroes are just doing 1, and it's just they're not. It's everything
You
else
don't
is
like
just
it.
dying.
You don't. It's not fun for you to just lose it constantly. I don't understand, Tommy.
No, losing constantly is not fun. You are correct.
So that's why I'm not so big a fan on this. Like
Because you have me to
standard
play with.
and pioneer. Well, one I have to play against Tommy, who's been playing standard for 6 months, and
Yeah.
I just picked it up.
Yeah.
So he's
Yeah.
way better. Like period. And then on top of that, it's like the decks are pretty linear. There's not a lot to it. Like by turn 3, I know I've lost and it's over. And why are we playing the game still? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And also, we
And
talked about.
that's boring. It's like, why are we even doing this if like 3 seconds later we're like, okay, it's done. Like I didn't draw the right thing, so game's over.
Yeah. And sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, and when you said linear, it's also just the consistency of 60 card compared to Magic or compared to Commander.
Yeah, you don't need to think through options so much.
Right.
And I guess that's just true of all these decks. I'll try this Pixie one to see what I think of it.
Yeah.
But it's similar to the Demir. Like a lot of the stuff is in here. I had the what was it? Fear of
Yeah.
Isolation.
That's standard. It's not Pioneer. But.
This town ain't big enough. Hopeless Nightmare. I didn't have the Storm Chaser talent, but only because I didn't have the stupid tokens to buy it, and I didn't have any Bloomberg cards, but it would have been in that deck because that was definitely one that people were talking about. Nowhere to Run, and I think that was it. I think everything else is different. But basically, that package, that sort of bounce, value package, is definitely in my Demir bounce deck, and yeah, that's just there's a lot of stuff that's standard. It seems.
Yeah.
It's like you have to play it, or you're losing value or losing efficiency. And the same with the was that the Pioneer Red Black. That one has a lot of the same stuff. Let me see if I can find it real quick. The Rakdos. So it has all the black. Anything with black typically has Fatal Push and Thought Seize, right? And 4 of both. It's like you have to carry it.
Yeah.
And then I guess the Unholy Annex isn't really anywhere else.
It's in
proportional to power, which
mono
you're
black
using.
mid range.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess this one is slightly different. I wonder, I must be missing some mechanics on what this is supposed to be doing. Because they're really tight set of cards. Like it really only has two things happening. So it's like it's definitely the demons and the unholy annex are key to it with Sheldred.
Yeah.
I don't fully understand what Crooks is doing, other than being a card discard guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't know. I'm clearly missing some stuff on this. If it's the top deck, I couldn't figure out how to play it against the red deck, unless the red deck is just its counter, which is possible. It's like top deck and the counter to that one.
Yeah.
Could be.
I don't know.
Well,
They're interesting
uh,
formats.
yeah, I'll continue to mess around with Pioneer because it's interesting and I have cards for it, unlike Standard.
Yeah. And it's basically the cards just John and I have well, so when John and I started getting back into Magic, it's just like 2 years behind that. So not too many cards that we'd be unfamiliar with. Looking
And I think,
backwards.
yeah, I think I went and bought a bunch because it's during COVID.
Yeah.
I spent a ton of money in Arena, and I think I bought like all the older stuff that you could get at the
Yeah.
time. So I
So it's
I
just the
think I
newer
have
stuff that's missing
most
for
of
you.
it. Yeah, exactly. I don't go all the way back to Aether, whatever, because that one, not Aether Drift, Kaldheim.
Kaladesh?
Yeah, Kaldash, that's it. Yeah. I don't go all the way back, although I do have some of those cards because they didn't have Kaldash in there at the time, if you recall. When we first started playing,
Mm-hmm.
it went
And we were
back, but I
playing a lot
didn't go
of
all
Brawl
the
when
way
that
back.
came out.
Yeah, yeah. So that came out. I got some of those cards, but like basically that Kaldheim's in the
Mm-hmm.
card time frame, I think I bought almost all the cards and all the sets around that
Yeah, that
time
was
frame.
when we really got into it.
Yeah, and definitely like what was the one with Magecraft, Strixhaven?
Mm-hmm.
I played the hell out of that.
I've
So
been
I know I
selling a
have
lot of Strixhaven singles.
Yeah, they're good cards.
Yeah.
They're good cards. I'm surprised they're not more in the meta, but obviously they've pumped stuff.
For sure.
That was
I mean,
something where the
yeah.
mechanic required you to understand the stack, though, because it was the copy on the stack. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That whole thing. That was pretty critical at the time. That magic was fun. I enjoyed that kind of magic. I don't know. I'll give this pixie thing a try. See how this goes.
Yeah, I think you'll like it.
If I can even get the cards. That's the problem. Okay, so here's a question for the audience. What's the fastest way I can get these cards that I don't have? Because you need a bazillion rares for any deck. It's
Yeah, I've been
ridiculous.
looking at some of them in Pioneer, and it's like you need 50 rares or 30
I
rares, and it's just like,
know, I know.
but that's a
It's
lot.
crazy. It's nutso, and
And I
it's
have all
all the
these,
recent stuff.
yeah, and I have all these
Well, at least it
mythics.
seems like it.
I have all these
Yeah,
mythic wild
exactly.
cards that I can't use because I don't need them.
Yeah, I used up all mine when I first came back to make the Rakdos deck because I had some from before, and I was like, okay, I'll build the top deck and just play that on the ladder until I understand
Yeah,
like what the world is about. And yeah, it's cheesy, but I don't
it
want to
gets you
spend a
the
bunch of
wins.
money
Yeah,
on it. Yeah, exactly. I
it
want to
gets you
get
the
my
coins.
daily stuff so I can get the
Yeah,
coins, so I can kind of get the cycle going. But
yeah.
um, yeah, I have the Rakdos. So I don't even have the full Rakdos. So this is what I've done is I've taken these top decks, I've put them in there, and if
Mm-hmm.
I'm close, I just delete the cards that I right, craft everything else, and then like that I can't afford, and then go and find filler.
Yeah,
So
that's
the
what I
decks
was.
I'm playing like cheesy versions of the best decks, like
Yeah,
broken, not actually on mechanics. So even the
yeah.
Rectos one, I have no sideboard. I have like I'm definitely like two
No,
copies
just
of
play best of
Shieldred
ones.
instead
You're
of
fine.
three or whatever. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Yeah, exactly. It's like, does it work? It works. It's fine.
Arena's a best of one.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
was reading that people were saying Pioneer best of three is really where it's at for a fun game
I believe
with a
it.
sideboard.
I
Yeah.
believe it.
So once I get enough cards to actually have a sideboard, then I might start doing that, and I bet I'll enjoy it a lot more.
I'm sure. Yeah, because it's that one game. All right, we found out the winner, but now we know what each other is doing. So
Yep. All right. Enough with that. It was good talk.
what's but yeah, I also ran out of rares making those decks yesterday, so I'm back
It's
to
annoying.
not
Super
having
annoying.
rares.
I'm
And
not
I
buying
didn't.
them for $10.
No, I'm
Bullshit.
not. I haven't spent money on Arena since coming back.
I appreciate they offer that, but that's bullshit.
Yes, it is.
Because they didn't offer it at all before. There's
No,
no way to
no,
pay to get your deck.
no. But it's yeah. So I did the same thing. I just kind of deleted the cards that I didn't have, and then just filled in with fun cards that I thought would work.
Yeah, close enough or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Yep.
But
Yeah, just wanted to look at the bundle prices. So it's what is it, $10 for the and $20 for the mythics? That's ridiculous.
it's silly. It's silly. Don't spend money on Arena. You don't have to.
I mean, unless you want to go for 6 months building up points.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the points snowball at that point. It's the rich get richer kind of thing.
All right, moving on.
Neon
Just want to
Dynasty
point
sold
out.
out.
No, 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 no. Similar to my Lord of the Rings thing, I
Mm-hmm.
sold at a higher than market price. I had one box on there. It just sold yesterday.
Collector.
Um, no, no, this is just regular draft.
Oh.
So basically, Neon Dynasty was the dog for the longest time in draft, like has been for very, very long time. It was the height of the overprint era, I guess. And there's just a lot of boxes and not a whole lot of demand after the initial release.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like the Baldur's Gate was kind of a dog for a long time too. Basically they're both moving up, so that's why I put this in here because my one box sold and it was, I don't know, 10-20% above whatever the listing price was at the time. And so that means it's not a lot. I think it's at like 115 or something. It's not like crazy high, but it moved from that $90 range, which it had been at forever. So that's finally moving to that next tier, meaning basically supply is starting to run out. Now, granted, I'm sure a lot of people like me have a bunch of it sitting on a shelf and it will come to market and it will stabilize. But
Oh, I got
just,
a bunch.
yeah, I was going to say, I think that was one a lot of people have a lot of it sitting on shelves.
Because
That's
it's
why
one of the
it's
best.
so
It was
low.
one of the best draft formats of the era.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah,
yes,
it
it
was
was
well liked. Everyone
overprinted,
bought it.
but it has a lot of strong cards, and it uh, just the limited experience of it is a ton of fun.
I'm curious if, because it had a lot of vehicles, if its like leg up is tied to Aether Drift having good vehicle support stuff, so people want some of that older stuff. Much like we're seeing right now, Baldur's Gate is starting to sell. There's another
Yep.
point because Tarkir,
Mm-hmm.
because the dragon synergies. So you're seeing a lot of Baldur's Gate move because everyone wants the dragons for this next thing. Like, I'm wondering if they do that on purpose and it helps the secondary market continue to flush out. I
It's
don't know.
really it's really the lands that are the hits in Kamigawa.
What was the lanes in that one?
There's like Bojiju who endures.
Oh yeah, those legendary
Um,
lands. Yeah,
mhm.
those were good.
The
Those were good.
Fable of the Mirror Breaker that's in your Rakdos deck. That's a saga,
Yep.
but um, Otawara Soaring City is the blue one, and then the white one, uh, Iganjo Seat of the Empire. A lot of these are played in Pioneer and Modern. It's a lot of these sets are just it's the lands. Like there are cards obviously, but the big hitters are the lands.
Yeah. Well, I wonder why they're moving now then. It's weird.
I think so. My theory is it's the play boxes. It's with when sealed moves, you got to look at other sealed, and you're looking at these play boxes are really gaining traction. Yes, the new ones are $100, but remember they're 30 packs. The 36 pack play boosters are like 120 to 150, and so when you see all these fun sets with 36 packs, yes, they're draft and not play, but
Same thing in most people's mind.
yeah,
So it should be 130 is what you're saying.
yeah.
Like
So I'm
mentally, but
I'm thinking
people are
the
thinking.
draft. Yeah, the people are looking at the draft boxes and they're like, well, this is cheap. And think about it, you have a bunch of new people coming into Magic because it's working, and they're looking back at older, cooler sets like Kamigawa, which I think has mass appeal. Like when you just look at all the sets that came out during that period as a new player, what's in like Cyber Ninjas? That seems cool.
Yeah, definitely. I remember it being a hot theme. I
Yeah,
liked it. I know there was a lot of controversy around it, but that does also lend to it being remembered,
yeah,
right? Because it's like people were talking about it, like, oh, ninjas and all this, or I guess it wasn't the ninjas; it was the robots that everyone was upset with, right?
yeah. And a lot of the uh, there's a lot of cards in like the Demir aggro stuff with the
Yeah,
ninjutsu for
yeah,
Pioneer.
yeah. I don't know. I thought I'd point it out because I have these little markers in the market where
Hmm.
I'm over listing and I list 10-20% above, and when it hits it, I might as well let you guys know so you know.
Yeah, I think across the board, expect to see some movement in draft boxes. If there's some you want, grab them. Because I think they are going to reprint. They're old now. They're
Hmm.
not being printed anymore.
Mm-mm.
So
It's been a long time for some of them.
and yes, they were overprinted, but I think it's going to be one of those moments where we randomly just have a spike up and don't come back down.
Yeah, I think you're gonna
We'll
see.
have a couple more spikes up before that because, like you said, like people like me have a bunch in their closet.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
especially with Neon Dynasty, but I would expect ones like uh, Crimson Vow or Midnight Hunt or Adventures in the Forgotten Realms or what's the green one? Shoot,
It's not Zendikar or
no,
Theros.
no, newer.
Uh, Green one. I don't know.
The like mob bosses,
Oh, New Capenna.
New Capenna. Those 30 boxes have really struggled, and you can find them at really good deals. And those I think have the highest leg up opportunity. One because they're lower. Two, shoot, because
Because
people
they're old.
probably aren't holding them.
Yeah, it's possible. I don't know. At this stage, we're in a new era.
Yeah,
Things have shifted.
yeah. I think people are gonna start with the prices moving up on play boxes and the demand being so high and I think the demand for play boxes is so high because there aren't set boxes and the collector boxes are shorter, smaller prints than ever. So with those two combinations, you're left with just the play boxes. So if you want something from that set, it's a play box. And when you push all that demand onto one product, it has a higher chance of going up. Whereas all these draft boxes that we're talking about had set boxes.
Hmm.
So take a look at the set boxes, see which ones are doing well. Thrones of Eldraine or Wilds of Eldraine is the one, but then also the Wilds of Eldraine draft boxes already made that leg up and is in the 130s, I think.
Yeah, I was about to say, aren't they already priced up?
Yeah,
They've been priced up since the beginning, basically.
right. Because there's a
Because
lot.
that was the reduced print runs in that time frame, right?
Yeah,
Wasn't it that one, or was it just they did wild stuff and so everyone was really hyped for the high demand? Because I know that was that period. Wilds, I think, was the beginning of the everything went nuts.
yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, draft boxes are at 137.
yeah. So, anyways, cool stuff. Continues to evolve as always.
Yeah, there's
Uh,
25 draft boxes listed right now.
Yeah, it's for Wilds. Yeah,
Yeah,
Wilds has always been a tough market. I think this was I could be wrong on this, but I have a feeling this was the first time they did the kind of the new version of the waves they do, where
yeah.
it's like it actually ran out at distributor for a month or something, which
Hmm.
again that creates that excess demand, that built up demand in the stores. Like I need to get more of these. My players want them,
Yep.
and so they're willing to pay higher prices, and the players are like, well, we were out. I'll pay a higher price to get it because I really want those cards, right? They're bangers in that set. So
And right
I
now,
think that's
yeah,
what they were doing to engineer that, and it worked, from that age on.
yeah, and the same thing's happening right now. We're due later this month. Well, April. We're due the new wave of foundation boxes and Bloomborough.
Hmm. Yeah.
So like,
And Bloomberg is one of those that's the same thing, right? Banger cards,
hmm,
everyone wants it, and if you release it in slow waves, which they seem to have been doing since Wilds, it creates that pent up demand and allows it to. It's basically meeting demand with supply so they don't oversupply. Because the big lesson from a year or two
yep,
earlier was
yep, don't
when you
oversupply.
oversupply, yeah, and it gets dumped on Amazon, it's a massive brand damage. It's not
Hmm.
just damage to that one product line. Like everyone gets mad at WotC and Magic and stops playing and stops buying everything. And they were like, let's not do that again. So they
Yeah,
engineered a way to not have that happen.
yeah, and I think it took a little bit longer, but we're now starting to see, or those changes are becoming more apparent.
Yeah, well, because we're doing it from data interpretation, you have
Right.
to get far enough in to make sure that's actually what you're seeing,
Exactly. You won't know
and it
until it's
appears
after.
to be that's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
now we're at that stage. So,
Which is
all right, moving
interesting
on.
because I much prefer
Pokemon.
play boxes over collector. Yeah, Pokemon. So we had launch day for Journey Together on Friday. Box prices have come down, uh, but what I've noticed, the prices that are below where it was are all very low new uh,
Sellers, like
sellers.
untrustworthy
Yeah,
sellers. Yeah.
so that's an interesting thing is that people got it and they're just flipping it. Which, sure, do it. Um, if they were at 300 like they were a couple weeks ago, I would have done the same thing. But so, and we still have the two different boxes, even though most likely if you order a box, it'll be the enhanced. TCG Player has both listed. The regular is at 222, selling 59 a day, and the enhanced is at 233, selling 29 a day. Both sell through is down and prices are down, which I found interesting. So when the price is lower, less people are buying, which is how it always goes because, yeah, I don't know. It just,
Because people aren't smart. Let's just
they
say.
haven't been here before.
Yeah, it's
But
true.
this is what happened with Surging Sparks, right? It came out and then dipped and then went up. So I'm imagine like once we sell through all the people that are just flipping, I see this at $300 a box by the end of the year.
Is there any sign that this has a larger print run than these last few sets?
No,
Yeah, see, it's going to be insane until they fix that, which I don't know if they're really that interested in fixing it.
they are. Um,
They said
Update
so, like, what was it, 6 months ago, and never did anything.
correct, and they just released another update, which is my next thing. Um, Two key points here. So on the 27th, they put this out. You can Google update on Pokemon trading card game product availability. It should be the first thing that pops up. Um, so reprint, two things to note here though. It is kind of the standard thing that they always say, but
Yeah,
slight differences. Reprinted products are expected to be available at participating retailers as soon as possible. Now, I work in marketing, and when you say as soon as possible, you have no idea.
yeah, that's the problem. Something is going on here. I don't know what is actually happening, but they are. Something is going on. Something is not working on their side, or they don't want it to actually work, which I guess is possible.
For the next one,
Very out of character for Pokemon, though.
the next big thing, which is new, for new Pokemon TCG expansions launching in the future, so not Journey Together,
Mhm.
we are maximizing production to increase product availability upon release. And we will continue to reprint the impacted products to replenish stock at participating retailers, including Pokemon Center, as soon as possible.
They said that 6 months ago, though.
This one's different. They didn't say the future part. So what I'm thinking is, remember how we were talking a couple months ago about how there's going to be a set that they just call people's
Yes.
bluff on,
Yes, and it will
and we
pop the
thought it was
whole
going to
thing.
be Journey Together.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
were wrong. It's not. It could be Destined Rivals, which is the next one.
So wait,
However,
are we sure it's not Journey Together? When was that press release? When did that come out?
the day before the launch.
So what if Journey Together is the first one and we just don't know it yet? The data hasn't represented it
It
because we
could
just
be.
don't
It could
we
be.
don't know.
But when you say future, I wouldn't include tomorrow necessarily. This is literally the day before release.
I don't know. That's in the future.
It could be. And if they reprint it, if they reprint Journey, so here's the question on Journey Together. When they reprint it, do they reprint the enhanced in the second wave, in the second printing? Or do they do just the regular booster box?
I mean, naming convention being silly aside,
Yes, because
why
it's just the box
wouldn't they
topper.
just put the box topper in there? Yeah, I see no reason not to, unless it creates an additional cost, like excess effort.
I would assume it does.
Does it? I feel like box toppers have been around forever, so I don't know.
Yeah, but they have to print the box toppers separately, wrap them in the plastic, and then put them in the box.
Yeah.
Not saying it's the hardest thing in the world.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I
I'm
think
just
that
saying this
everyone's
is the
set up
first
to do
time we've
that.
had a box topper in a very long time in Pokemon, and there are two
That's
different
fair.
versions.
That's fair. That's fair.
If
In
there
Pokemon,
wasn't,
it's
yeah,
the key qualifier here.
yes. Yeah, it's been a very long time,
Yeah.
and it's not random. So, um, but they say this, but I'm think Destined Rival is probably going to be the most hyped set. So does it even matter? And does this increase product availability upon release? Does that just get eaten up as well? The thing that will really matter is, and what kept Sword and Shield at the prices they were for so long, was keeping Pokemon Center stocked, keeping things at available at MSRP.
Yeah.
And I think that's the long roundabout way that they are trying to get this new MSRP to stick. Because
Yeah. I mean,
remember, they
that's the
jumped to
real
like
answer.
$20. That's the real answer. They're trying to get that new price. They're trying to erase product price memory of those $90 to $100 booster boxes.
Yeah, if they get everything selling at MSRP, which they're now over that, so MSRP is considered like a nice discount, right? We
Yeah,
talked about that
people
last
are
week.
yelling and screaming, but it's not MSRP.
Yeah, if they basically let Center become the floor. Actually, this is the easiest way to solve this if they can. I don't know the
Mm-hmm.
logistics or the printing capacities, stuff like that, but it's to put out waves as much as they can to distro, but
Mm-hmm.
it is the excess over a certain set amount based on current sell-through rates of boxes at Pokemon Center that will keep it in stock until the next wave can
Correct.
be gained from the printer. Because what that does is it forces a floor. It forces that, or sorry, it forces a ceiling where everyone's just going to keep buying from there, right? And then that just keeps the prices in check. So that's the best way to do it is say, screw you allocators, your distro partners in the stores, and just Pokemon Center. It's basically the Amazon dump, right?
Yeah.
But they control the Amazon, right? That's what they should do if they wanted to actually get this under control. Now, again, I don't know the logistics. I don't know the contracts they have. Like, if they do that to distros, do they suddenly lose distribution? Like, I
Right.
don't know. I don't know the details behind the scene. There's probably reasons they don't do that, but that's the single shot answer to calm this market down. And it sounds like they're prepping to do that based on what they're saying, max capacity printing, blah
Yep.
blah blah, all that stuff. But is During Together the first one, or will it be the next set, whatever.
Yeah,
And
we don't know.
again, do we trust it because they've said things like this before?
Right, exactly. That's why I grabbed the case when I did. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, also because I have nostalgia. Like it hit it out of all the sets that have come out over the past couple of years. Journey Together and Destiny Rivals are definitely ones that hit my nostalgia because that's like when I was collecting. There was the Team Rocket set, there was the Gym Heroes set, and that's what these are calling back to.
Yeah.
So
All
interesting
right.
time.
We're burning through our time, and I know you have places to be,
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
guess jump onto economics real quick.
Unfortunately,
Uh, yeah, the quick and dirty of it. So there was some inflation data that came out this week, and it scared the hell out of the markets. Honestly, they dumped pretty hardcore on that news. It wasn't even up that much. It was just ticking up a little bit. I think it was like 0.2%, something like that. It wasn't a lot, but it wasn't down is the key thing. And so this is again another indicator, like we said last week, it was going down at a slower rate, or not last week, last month or whatever it was. It was going down at a slower rate. Now it's going up, that means we've hit the bottom and it's turning around. You do not want to see inflation turn around, especially considering the economic growth slowing that all the cuts at the federal level and all these other things are going to cause. We already know it's already starting to cause GDP reduction. We've seen Fed predictions of negative 2.8% GDP growth for the year. If that's even partially true, call it negative 1%. Way less bad than what they're predicting. It's still bad in an inflationary environment because then you get into stagflation, which is what spooked the markets. We're seeing a lot of serious signs of stagflation coming, and again, that's lost decades. That's the worst situation you can get into. Everyone's very upset by this in the economic world. So not a good sign, and things will have to happen to combat it. Unfortunately, the Fed, despite having its independence, does not have a lot of tools to handle stagflation. It has to come down to Congress doing things, and that's where it's really scary for economic markets because Congress can't get things done pretty much ever when it comes to this sort of stuff because of the politics of it all. Car payment defaults at record levels. That means people have lost their jobs and or don't have money or overbought. I'm guessing probably losing jobs based on what we've seen in other data. We will get some job data this week, I think, which we'll talk about next week. But I'm guessing we start seeing the first signs of either layoffs or reductions in forces, sort of thing, where it's basically you're going to start seeing not unemployment necessarily tick up, but less jobs available and less people actually engaged in the market searching for jobs, that sort of thing. So that is happening. Car prices are expected to boom as much as 30% because of tariffs. There was new tariffs announced around cars. And Trump even came out and said he doesn't give a damn what the prices of cars are. So, meaning he's not going to protect the car.
Wonderful.
Yeah, the car companies, like, because I think Ford went there and was trying to get access to him and say, "Hey, please save us," this, that, and the
Yep.
other,
Because they
and
rely on Canada
basically,
and Mexico a
yeah,
lot.
and it's U.S. business. Like, their car makers in the U.S. have been a staple of U.S.
Yep.
Economic structure since cars. So anyways, that said, it sounds like he doesn't care and he's not going to do much to help them out. And if that's the case, then expect car prices to jump because these tariffs will absolutely affect them because the way cars are made, they're actually made in multiple countries. They're not made in one. Like you make I don't know enough about cars to say this correctly, but like you make the engine in Canada, you make the
Yep.
framing
Yeah.
in Mexico, and you put it all together in America, sort of thing. Like is how it happens and has been happening for decades.
Yeah.
It's no longer going to work that way, or it won't work that way well. And this is not something you can turn on a dime and make the engines in America. We just don't have the capacity, the facilities, the workers, the pricing, the blah, 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 the steel. All these things are impacted by tariffs, and therefore you can't just change it. It would take over a decade to change it. So in that decade, we will lose productivity and the ability to sell this. On the other side of this equation, China has just released this. I think it's China's. Yeah, it is China. Has released this electric car that is incredibly competitive. For the first time ever, the largest car company in the world is Chinese.
Mm.
That has never happened in the history of cars. It's always been an American company, with Germany coming in at certain phases and making waves. Uh, Now it's the Chinese because they came out with an electric car that's very affordable and they are spreading it globally. And you can't even buy it in America. You can't buy the stock. You can't buy the car and you probably won't be able to ever because of this tariffs and all this sort of stuff, even though it's considered the best car by the market because it's basically booming everywhere it releases. So, for electrics, that is. All right, on to farming.
As
Apparently,
hold on.
farmers.
As
Go ahead.
someone who used to work in the auto parts world, recommendation. It is not just, oh, I'm not going to buy a new car. I'll be fine. Here's my recommendation. If you've been neglecting your car and there are issues that are fine for now, but won't be shortly, go to your mechanic and just be like, hey, anything that's questionable, can we get that fixed? Can we get that done? Because it's going to be the parts as well.
Yeah, the parts are definitely going to go up as
Yep.
part of this. Yeah, yeah. Be aware.
Yeah.
Um, Farming, similar thing with the tariffs. Basically, a lot of our, I think, excess corn and pork gets sold in China. Some stuff gets sold to Canada, and then we get stuff from Mexico for like avocados and fruits and stuff. Um, because of these tariffs, basically major farmers and producers are scrambling and struggling, and we're going to see some pretty big hits in the rural parts of America, the farming areas, etc., which are tend to be red. There's an interesting statement by Mark Cuban, like him or hate him, whatever. He's made a lot of money and done a lot of things that have had economic impact. So he has an opinion that you can listen to a degree. Not everyone that's wealthy is smart. But at the same time, he's done some stuff that indicates he's aware of how markets work. But he called it the red rural recession is coming. And part of that is because most of those things that are getting cut at the federal level actually benefit red states and red areas more than they benefit blue. And that's historically true. You can look up the math, it's all over the place. Basically, red states take and the blue states produce. Red states need supplements for their farmers, for the the pour out there the various things that are necessary to help keep communities alive and working because they don't produce that much themselves, but we need food. And so it's strategically valuable to support those communities to keep our country from starving, things like that, which has been
Hmm.
the case since all the way back before World War II. We've been doing that sort of supplementing for a long time. And these sorts of cuts, these blanket cuts that they're making, are affecting these support systems. And they overwhelmingly support these red rural areas. And they're all about to feel the pain of this, administration's kind of slash and burn mentality. I certainly don't think Musk cares two wits about those areas or what happens to them. And he's the one doing most of the budget cuts. So expect that to happen. It causes a lot of disruption and stuff. It could cause food price spikes beyond the tariffs. It can also cause disruption in things like trucking and shipping because one of the main economic drivers in those areas is truck stops in places where shipping across this large geographic country is critical. It's critical infrastructure for everything. Everything gets shipped and moved in trucks, and those places are little hubs for the trucks to move through or stop because it takes multiple days to cross the country. If they lose this support, they stop existing as a place for trucks to stop, and that makes trucking more expensive and more difficult when you're talking about transcoastal stuff. So, say I'm trying to think, like steel comes in California and needs to go to Detroit, right? Things
Yeah.
like that. It's going to disrupt those long country transport systems in the current structure of things. Now, is there a possible solution to that? I don't know. Maybe, and I'm not giving Musk credit for this because I don't think he actually thinks this way. But maybe I'm wrong. The automated trucks he put out there not that long ago as a kind of a prototype thing, maybe that's the answer. You don't need truck stops if you have robotic trucks.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure I like the idea of it at all. There's all sorts of downsides to that aside from just destroying our rural areas. I love our rural areas. I'm a big camper, hiker, mountain person, and they're all in rural areas. That's where I spend a good chunk of my time, and I spend money in those areas
Hmm.
a lot of the time. And I've been through areas in my way here or there where you can tell it used to be a coal town or something, right? And
Sure.
it's no
Oh yeah.
longer. And it's like
Especially in
decimated.
Pennsylvania.
It is a sad sight to see American towns that are just falling apart like that, and this is gonna amplify that by a lot.
Yeah.
And that's heartbreaking to me because they're Americans just like us,
Yeah.
and they live in a different area. They have a different set of values and thoughts and processes, but they're still human beings that are trying to make a living, and no one wants to see harm come to people. They're just trying to live, right?
No.
And this looks like that's what's going to happen, unfortunately. So anyways, I'm not sure how that part ties to cardboard, but the other stuff obviously does, as we've talked about. If you have to pay more for your car and your food, then ultimately you're not paying for your cardboard bits because you don't have the extra money. So
Yep.
do expect that, especially if this jobs report comes in and we're starting to see real economic downturn on that side of things. That's a bigger sign for stagflation. And basically, all the big money movers are saying, "Oh no, we got to start preparing for that." That's what the market being spooked by that inflation up because it was not a dramatic amount. It wasn't like jumping to 8% or anything,
Right.
but it moved up by like 0.2%. Everyone's like, "Oh, the sky is falling." It's like, well, not really, but I see why you think that.
Yeah.
And that's it for the economic news. Sorry for the downer. Wish I had more
It's
better
okay.
news.
It's okay. Yeah. It's one of those things where it's gonna. I've always thought we're gonna have this downturn, but now more than ever, it's just like, oh well, duh. Like all the like you were saying, it's just a giant. When you were explaining about the trucks and the truck stops and all that stuff, and just how everything works, it's a set of dominoes, right? You knock one over, they all are dependent on each other. They're gonna feel the impact of the domino before it and fall over as well,
Yeah, and we saw it during COVID where certain like odd disruptions caused all these ripple effects in other
including the
areas that we didn't
automobile industry.
expect. Yeah, exactly. Is that we saw it like chips couldn't get produced because there's a big lockdown in China or whatever, and because of that it reduced the availability, which then
Hmm.
affected cars, which then affected, like it just went all over the place. So we're seeing the same thing again, and I think we're going to see more of it. I don't know how this turns around into something positive, because tariffs just don't really work. They never have. The last time we tried an extensive blanket tariff like philosophy in this country was back during the Great Depression, and it's largely credited with extending it because they thought that could work to raise money to help people out and stuff, and it did not. It basically made the Depression last longer. So unless they come to their senses on that and start formulating alliances and doing the hard work of actually negotiating in good faith and making trade deals that make sense for both parties, it's not really going to work. There's some arguments that people are saying this chaos is to scare people to the table. The answer is that's foolish in this world. We're way too connected and way too much information. You're not going to scare people to the U.S. table when they can just go to China and make a deal, and that's what we're seeing. Basically, all of Europe is now in negotiations with China to replace our trade agreements with them. And South America is doing the same thing where we had trade agreements before. They were already tied to China fairly heavily. Now they're more so. Canada and Europe are looking at a European pact. And then, of course, Canada had some Chinese integration already economically. So what you're seeing is the global power shift, economically speaking, is moving to China because they're out there trying to make deals and trying to make things work for people and trying to make room for this, that, or the other. Where the U.S. is basically stepping away. And one of those things that I think a lot of people agree was wasteful. I didn't particularly because I understand soft power and how it works, but that's you're getting into geopolitics at that point more than economics. But U.S. aid was a huge factor. It was a small amount of money. It seems like a lot because it's like millions of dollars, right? Which is a lot for any individual. But it was a small amount of money into hurting communities around the globe in different ways that made sense for that community. And what it did was it offered a way for us to have diplomatic and useful ties. It's like, hey, we will help support this XYZ program locally that helps, enrich your local economy. And as a result, we want to make sure that you guys are there when we need a vote in, the UN or whatever, right? Um, since we pulled back on almost all the USAID stuff, I think they like killed almost all of it, if not all of it. What's happened is China stepped up. So in the future, when we need to get something done globally, China will have the political support, not the U.S., because China is putting these funds in. These essentially, it's the equivalent of USAID. They're doing aid programs to fill in the gaps that we left behind. And it's like this is what happens when you cut yourself off from the world, as this administration wants to do. You lose the ability to influence the world. No one wants to come to the table with you. You're not going to scare people to the table. They're going to make deal with the other, big guy on the block, and that's what they're doing. Especially since China is being overwhelmingly generous right now, specifically to take advantage of the bad feeling that the U.S. is leaving behind. So it's not going to be a great thing. We're going to have to get through it. I hope we stay out of stagflation because that will be, devastating for this country if we end up there. So let's just hope things go better and people kind of figure it out. I'm sure there'll be some pushback at some point before too long, but I don't know how long it takes and if it will be listened to.
Well, if you would like to read about that possible future, you can take this comic book recommendation of Undiscovered Country. Journey into the near future and an unknown nation that was once the United States of America, a land that's become shrouded in mystery after walling itself off from the rest of the world without explanation over 30 years ago, when a team seeking a cure for a global pandemic breaches the U.S. borders. They quickly find themselves in a struggle to survive this strange and deadly lost continent.
Well, okay then.
As you were talking, I was like, wait, there's a comic book about
like
this.
yeah.
And
So,
America literally built the wall around itself.
oh Lord. Okay. Well, that's ridiculous. Hopefully that's a fun read.
It is a fun read, actually. It's one of my favorite comic book writers, Scott Snyder, with another one of my favorite writers, Charles Soule.
That's cool.
It's a very good book. But yeah, it came out during the pandemic, and it was just kind of like, oh yeah, that could imagine.
Yeah.
And then now we're here, and I'm just like, oh, this feels a little more real.
I've read about this. I don't like where this is going.
Yeah, wait, I've read a comic book about this. But yeah, definitely interesting times.
For sure.
Yeah, as always, take care of yourself first. Take care of your dependents first. Cards come
Yep.
second, third,
Yeah.
fourth, fifth, sixth.
Yeah.
Should not
Stay out
be.
of debt.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if the world's still spinning next week, we'll catch you guys later.
Have a good one.